Look, it doesn't pertain to us, but somewhere the Bayern Munich Vision podcast host is having the time of his life. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, the 10-0. If ever you wanted a reason for Arsenal to be in the Club World Cup, that's it. So I can get my 10-0, then we can end the podcast forever. We had a good run. We got our 10-0. It's done. Just so we're clear, if we do ever get the 10-0, we're not ending the podcast. I know that's the promise I've made, but it's not a promise I intend to keep. I will tell you a promise we did keep is ranking things and people and times. And Tim was kind enough to join for Patreon Pod with no warning, where I thought of this overnight while he was sound asleep. And we did the top 5 players, games, moments, and teams, league seasons of the Post-Invincibles era. And as lists tend to do, it provoked quite a bit of discussion, disagreement, in some cases even anger. I will admit that not giving Tim the time to think about it meant that there were some players who deserve to be revered, respected, and highly regarded who did not make lists. And for that, I take the blame and sincerely apologize. You can send your messages to me at Posting in My Pants on Twitter. So yeah, there's that. We are doing the Transfer Daily, and it's happening every single day. And it's actually been quite fun. We're having a light, happy time with it. We did Friday Night Clive, a brand new series called Friday Night Clive. It's like Saturday Night Live if Saturday Night Live was just way more awesome and about football and had Clive on it. Friday Night Clive. So that's going on. Yes, I sang show tunes on last night's Transfer Daily. So there's something for everyone and indeed something for no one. So anyway, lots going on, lots to cover. We're going to talk a little Club World Cup, but through a bit of a unique lens. And one of the things I want to talk about today is, does Arsenal have an identity crisis as a club? Because when we did these top 5 rankings, one of the things I did is just start looking at our season results since 2004. And I don't want to tell anybody news that they aren't aware of, but I am going to break news on this podcast. Since 2004, Arsenal have won 0 Premier Leagues and 0 Champions Leagues. And it's starting to feel, as I think about it, that the identity we want to have as a club in England and Europe needs to be matched by the results. And we're going to talk a bit about that identity crisis, how we get there, and where we are right now vis-a-vis where we've come from. Because the other thing you're going to notice if you look back on the last 20 years of Arsenal, there haven't been a lot of high watermarks in the really big competitions. As high as where we are now, but not as high as we want to be. So we'll cover that. We'll also cover the transfer news as well. But first, the first thing we have to cover is who is on the podcast. Because that is not clear until I make it clear. And 2 minutes and 46 seconds in, I think is the right time for me to say, hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. Okay, let's do some Club World Cup stuff first, just real quick. And look, I said this before, and I'll say it again. Everybody's taken their turn to line up to crap on this competition. And I don't think it's the kind of thing that requires any additional oomph, any additional emphasis. You know, if you don't like it, it's not for you, great. If you do like it, it is for you, great. But the thing I will say is I watched a bit of it, and it was not a roaring advertisement for competitive football. We had a really boring 0-0 to kick off the tournament. We had a 10-0 already, as we mentioned, between Bayern and Auckland. The Palmeiras and Porto game was not exactly the best I've ever seen. Some of the pitches aren't ideal. A lot of fouling, a lot of stoppages of play, and it's only probably going to get worse as the heat in America ramps up. So I guess, Clive, one of the things that I'm just curious about for you is maybe not necessarily the fact that it's grabbing your attention now, but one thing I thought about as I laid in bed thinking about the Club World Cup last night, exactly what Sepp Blatter would have wanted once upon a time, and now Gianni Infantino, is that there will be a point in this tournament where it's Bayern versus City and PSG versus Chelsea or something, or Real Madrid in a quarterfinal or a semifinal. And at that point, I wonder if you think this is going to start to feel like a tournament of consequence or not. What's your take on the football calendar now, where your attention's going, and if it will be dragged over there eventually as it pares itself down?
Yeah, things could change, right? If you're playing a game of football and there's $20 million on the line, suddenly you start running around, right? So at this early stage of the competition,
I'd run around for $20 million.
Well, there's money there, isn't there? There's serious money, I think. And so for the winner, it's 90 million or whatever it is. So that's a lot. That's a lot, isn't it? That is a lot. You know, you get £2 million to win the FA Cup, right? So that tells you the sort of difference we're talking about here. And so for me, that may give you the edge. It's interesting. I saw a clip the other day actually that the Sky and TNT, they're the broadcasters over here in the UK that we use, that their numbers were down on the Premier League this season. And partly blamed for the fact that the bottom three was sorted pretty early, and the top one was sorted once all our hamstrings ripped off and the rest of it. So there wasn't really a battle for the Premier League. So without jeopardy, without that edge, people were not there, right? Not focused. And so they chose to do other things. So it's the same for this tournament. At the moment, there is no edge for me. You know, my capacity of absorbing sport, there's lots of teams that I watch. I just haven't got room to watch this or to have the edge or have the thirst for it. So that's my personal position. And I'm trying to hold it, right? So when PSG Atletico was on, Athletic Madrid, sorry, I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. But I said, no, I'm not gonna do this because I think it's too much. And it's almost like my personal protest and leave it to the fact I think it's too much football for many of the European teams. And you're gonna get football like that. You're gonna get half paced football, half intense football. Maybe people check out on games, etc. If they go 2 goals behind. I think it takes a lot of effort to get back in, do his late slide. I don't know, but I just know my own personal brain has not got no more room, so I'm leaving it alone at the moment.
Tim, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, forgive me, this might be a monologue because I think there's so much that's interesting about this.
I've heard people want more monologues on the Arsenal Vision podcast, so we're really giving the listener what they want. So fire away, please.
Let's not insult the intelligence of the listeners by saying this is a money grab and this is a political thing because FIFA, doesn't really have a hold on the club game and all of that. I think our listeners know that, but I think there are so many. Let me first preface this by saying I haven't watched it and I've got no intention of watching any. I don't watch the Champions League group stages because I find them dull and not interesting, and that's not even a forced protest. Like I just don't want to watch them, so I won't watch this. Look, I think one of the things that just this tournament suffers with, because all tournaments are contrived, they all start somewhere and they all get a history over time, and I don't rule out that this one might, particularly for younger audiences and things like that. I don't think as a 41-year-old man I am the center of the world. And this,
you're probably too young, is really what it is, Tim. When I think about
this tournament might come to mean something, to younger fans and generations to come, and all of that. But I think there are so many interesting angles. I think first of all, an under-discussed angle is actually how this might distort some leagues across the world. I mean, first of all, even in Europe, do we need PSG, Bayern, Man City getting another 90 mil? Not really. I don't think that's going to be very good for the domestic leagues. And what about New Zealand and in Africa? And I'm not saying those leagues should get investment, but it's not going to be leagues getting investment. It's going to be teams. So we've already seen what Champions League money has done to say mid-tier European competition, where the same teams win the league every year because they go into Champions League group stages. They get their 6 games. They probably go out, but then they go back to their leagues and they just win it 13 years in a row. That's going to happen a lot more. I like to think I'm well versed on the not being Eurocentric about this because I covered South American football for a while. This might be the most hipster thing I'm ever going to say, but I was at a Copa Libertadores final in 2013 when Atletico Mineiro won, and the first thing people were talking about was Morocco for the Club World Cup. Right, the Club World Cup, as was Intercontinental Cup, meant everything. I knew people that sold their cars to go to Morocco and watch Atletico Mineiro in the Club World Cup. So, I think I'm well versed with that. And I think if you were looking at it, from a purely kind of, okay, it's here, whether I'm, object to the premise or think that there's too much football, might be quite interesting actually to find out, Flamengo versus Borussia Dortmund or something like that. I think we all understand that the top European teams who are going to win the Champions League, there's going to be a big gap to teams from other continents. But what is the gap between, say, Benfica, Porto and Palmeiras? Probably what is the gap between those teams? What is the gap between Borussia Dortmund and Botafogo, for example? That could be interesting to find out. You might get some, particularly because South America's mid-season as well, and they're going to have that more we want to beat the European team, we want to bloody some noses, so you might get some interesting results. I think what this really suffers from, though, is there is just literally people's capacity and the calendar. It's really, really difficult. Like, this is really crammed into the only tiny little space left. And I do think that there is an issue around kind of attention spans and all of that. And then, like, I'm guessing we don't want to go too much into the political context and all of that. But one of the things that's really interesting about this as a precursor for next year as well, like, you know, I follow a bit of NWSL, so the women's kind of elite league in the US, and Seattle Reign posted on their Twitter and Blue Sky accounts, they told their fans not to go because of the, you know, potential presence of ICE agents and stuff like that. Angel City played last night, and they did a big thing where they kind of changed their name on the scoreboard and around the stadium to Immigrant City. All the players came out in T-shirts that said Immigrant City, so there's this kind of political backdrop to it as well. And what's really strange about that, and I'm sure this conversation will have more next summer, is like the last two kind of places the World Cup was hosted, in Qatar and Russia, it felt like those places were trying to cover things up. You know, it was a sports washing operation, whereas this, like, that's not happening. There's like no real attempts to conceal the kind of you know, the more, shall we say, troubling or controversial political backdrop. So there's so much going on here that's so interesting, except for me, the actual product on the pitch, which I personally just don't have the capacity for at the moment.
Well, not to stay on the political topic, but I'll just say this because I think it's relevant to FIFA and relevant to this competition and the World Cup, which is that FIFA has a tradition and a history of feeling that it can kind of bully host nations into aligning with the goals of the sporting competition while the sporting competition is taking place inside their borders, right? So it's like, here are the criteria politically that you have to align with or adhere to have our tournament in your country. I don't think the United States, in terms of the size of the economy or the size of the government or the size of the population, are going to follow FIFA recommendations. So it is going to be this.
Just look at the debates over where the World Cup final should be held, because it's like, it's loads of independent billionaires who own these stadiums, and they're not, and like, you know, FIFA saying, well, we've got to deal with Adidas, and like, you know, a lot of American entrepreneurs going, balls to that.
Yeah.
Like, if Nike are going to pay more money, or if Pepsi are going to pay more money, yeah, we want that. Yeah, there's so much. I think we should also say as well, while we're on the kind of political point, this is nothing new. Like, Olympics and World Cups have always been, to some degree, some kind of sports washing. Like Argentina 78. Do you think Argentina wanted that because they fancied a football tournament? Like, Olympics for over a century, like Berlin in 1936. Do we think maybe that had a political purpose? So in discussing this, I think, you know, we should put front and center that none of this is anything new. It's just, what's weird about this is it isn't a sports washing operation, and the US administration is a bit like, yeah, we're bastards and we're not going to hide it. That's kind of the weird backdrop here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear, right, that whatever your politics, they are going to be front and center as part of these sporting events now, because this is not a country that puts a lid on that, right? This is not an authoritarian, well, you may regard it as an authoritarian regime, but I think we can at least acknowledge that from the standpoint of being able to vocalize the political controversies of the moment, right, the causes of the moment, that's very public and very publicly covered. So it is an interesting clash. And it's sort of funny, right? Because if I think back to years prior, I think the United States was regarded as the easy place to have a global sports competition because, you know, there's a lot of big stadia, and, you know, the United States does a pretty good job of putting on sporting events with little controversy or challenge. And, you know, the economy is big enough to support this. There's a lot of hotels and, you know, Ubers and all kinds of things to get people around, and restaurants and stuff like that. So it's just regarded as a very easy place to have these kind of tournaments. And this will certainly be an interesting test of that. Obviously,
like actual authoritarian regimes are actually much easier for FIFA because they really can just go, we'll knock all this down and stick a stadium up. Don't worry about it. And yeah, you will be tax exempt. Don't worry about it. Like, we don't have to worry about any political opposition to that. So I suspect FIFA probably is learning that a little bit.
Yeah, and these are knotty, thorny issues that I don't feel particularly well equipped to discuss in detail, only because there's so much that will change, obviously, in the next year, and so much that we don't know behind the scenes of what FIFA has agreed with the government. I mean, we saw Gianni Infantino in the White House displaying that work of art that is the Club World Cup trophy, because it's like a Rubik's Cube, Jenga tower, 3D, I don't know, gold plate. Anyway, but from a sporting standpoint, Clive, like, one of the things that I'm sort of curious about is the impact this will have on some of the major European clubs that are participating. And I think the perception has been that it will be negative, right? It will be bad because they're putting minutes in the legs that they don't need to put in right now when they should be relaxing. But there's one club that comes to mind for me that may benefit from this, and that's Manchester City. And it's relevant to our interests, so I want to get your take on this. Manchester City are saying goodbye to players like De Bruyne and Gundogan. They're hoping to get a Rodri back in top shape. They have a lot of players to integrate, right? Not just the ones they've just signed, like Reiners and Cherky, but Marmoush is still integrating. Kusanov wasn't seen. They have that midfielder guy. Was it Nico Gonzalez? Is that right? That's the name that comes to mind. Yeah. They have defenders they've signed who didn't really feature at the end of last season. Is there a world where this becomes actually a really nice advantage for Pep and City, because they get at least some competitive football in the legs of Rodri and some ability to integrate new signings early in the summer, so that then when they come back for preseason and when they come back to start the season, they're not trying to integrate an entire new squad. They've had a bit of a tournament to just figure out where they want players to play and how they want them to integrate. Could this be weirdly an advantage for a City that's trying to reload almost overnight?
It could be. It could be an advantage at the start of the season because they come in sharp. And I think that's going to be key. I think Liverpool, they came in sharp last year. They had a pretty soft schedule and they kept that sharpness, didn't they? And they used that to give them confidence and to hold their position as front runners, which they are very good at being front runners. And if City, win their first 5 games, suddenly they'll be City again. The aura will come back and people will go there and stop playing properly, So we have to be wary of that. I've been thinking about this, Elliot, so it's a great question. And I think it sounds crazy because I think the fixture list comes out on Wednesday, the 18th. And honestly, mate, that's a big day, because
have it in the calendar.
You will see a lot in that. It used to be, I used to look at the fixtures and say, I'm not bothered. Wait till Sky do their bit with the fixtures because I'm going to want to go to the games, right? But now, actually, I want to look at it a lot more closely. Strength of fixtures, it's true. It's going to be interesting to see what City, Chelsea, Liverpool get. Starts are really important, and we had a really tough schedule last year. Champions League kicked in. We didn't know who we were getting. Inter away, Atalanta away. These are tough games, right? And so, thrown into all those away games at Villa, at City, at Spurs. So yeah, that was a really tough opening, and we just about got through it. But it stretched us out. So if City then take their extra money and their new signings, they start to shine, and then they have a soft schedule, suddenly we're in a whole different place. If we have a couple of draws, you know what's coming, didn't you? You know what's coming. We're that Arsenal team again that always comes second, and have we got the minerals to take it over the line, right? So it's a real important moment. So I take your point and I agree with it. But let's watch them play, right? And when Rodri starts running around and doing his tackles and looking just like he always has done, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? But maybe, Elliot, with my Arsenal head on, maybe that's okay. Because a lot of people think we have to win and we could be potential favourites, particularly if we make signings. But if people can see City, see what they're doing, look what Liverpool are doing, then we can just play. We can just play and build and develop, right? So all to be confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder if you could get Pep alone or, people at City to talk to you what their true feelings are about playing right now. I think the sort of obvious answer is, we wish we didn't have these games. It's more minutes in the legs. But I think when you have squads that are being reshaped, like City's, or just enormous squads that you're trying to pare down, like Chelsea's, having these games can put you in a position to really understand the group better than you might have otherwise when the season starts and hit the ground running just a little faster, Clive, you know?
One last thing, it's just there's also could be a shop window for some of these players, right? So
That's true too. Yeah.
I'm not sure on what our deal was with Porto and Fabio Vieira, but normally he would be back now if his loan is ending. I think they bought a guy called Gabi Vega, but from Saudi Arabia, for about 17 million.
He played
Porto.
yesterday.
Yeah, and I assume I just did this maths, I may not be right. That's the sort of midfielder that Vieira is. But they bought. I know they both played, but they bought him, and they've not bought Vieira. So is Vieira been allowed to stay at Porto so he can be in the shop window? We potentially can get a sale. And people are going to use these games, aren't they? They're going to use these games for team bonding, in a good climate, in good facilities. They'll make it work. They'll make it work till January. When the Champions League rolls around, the League Cup rolls around, the league games roll around, the Christmas Cheddar rolls around, and they lose a game, it's going to be, well, we never got a break in the summer. And that's how it's going to be, right? And that's the way it goes, right? So from an Arsenal point, I just want our players to be rested. Because I know what I looked at towards the end of the season, and it wasn't a group of springing players, that's for sure. So rest up.
Yeah. I mean, and it depends on the squad, right? Like Arsenal have a pretty settled squad. I think we'll bring a striker into it and a new midfielder, but we're not completely reshaping our team. I think City are in a really interesting transitional moment. And, you know, this might be an opportunity for them to smooth out some of the bumps of that transition. We'll see. I mean, obviously, my hope is that it's an opportunity for them to be completely fatigued and start the season already out of puff. But I unfortunately don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Ultimately, what I can say about this competition is that so far through what we've seen, the standard hasn't been great. And I'm sure there will be moments. As I said, there's going to be a point at which PSG is playing City in a semifinal, or Real Madrid is playing Chelsea in a quarterfinal, and there'll probably be more interest in that. I do wonder, though, if what the world really needs is a summer Champions League, because while I totally accept, and by the way, not just accept, but appreciate that there are people from other regions that will really enjoy seeing their beloved teams play other teams from around the world, I almost wonder if it would be a better competition if the European clubs weren't in it. So it could really be a global competition of clubs that maybe economically are a little more aligned, Saudi Arabia notwithstanding, because you see it in the FA Cup. I mean, every once in a while there's an upset where like a Preston or, a Plymouth beats Liverpool or something, and it's a giant killing and it's exciting. But I think that also has the benefit of it being local teams, squaring off and things like that. When you see a 10-0 in a competition that's meant to be an elite competition, I don't know that's the best advertisement. Now I say that, and ironically, we had a 7-1 in a knockout competition just this season where Arsenal took PSV apart, and we've been 10-2'd by Bayern. Now that's over two legs. I get it's not 10-0 in one leg. So I should probably be a little bit more introspective about whether we see that disparity in competitions we're already a part of. But for me, you could convince me that Palmeiras against Auckland, against LA, LA Galaxy, like that there could be excitement about that. Throwing a PSG in there, I just think it distorts it. And you're going to wind up with a knockout round, my guess is, that looks a lot like the knockout round of the Champions League that we just wrapped up, except half a world away and during the summer. And that's where I think this is poorly thought out. I don't think it's going to deliver any real surprising knockout round contest. I think it's just going to be the Champions League revisited in some respect.
Yep. I suppose it depends how much people care about this, but like the qualification criteria as well. I mean, look, Inter Miami getting into it.
Well, we know why they're
not a robust criteria, but like, I mean, to be fair, I'm sure most people who are watching it don't care about this, but Chelsea are in it based on winning the Champions League in 2021. They've had 4 managers since then.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've got a single player from that team in it. So it's like the guy who scored the winning goal in that game has played for us for 2 years, so it's a bit like, it's, again, how much do people actually care about that? But the qualification criteria is a little bit, which is why I think, and look, we should say that some of the news underpinning this is all the clubs are going, we want to be in this, we want to be in this, and it's going to get expanded, and it'll be played more often than every 4 years. And it's just like the clubs are seeing the prize money and stuff like that. And what we should say as well about the kind of how much does this affect teams' kind of preparations, this is their pre-season. It's basically just happening. It's happening in the exact conditions it would usually happen. It's probably very similar opponents to who they'd usually play. Like, you're going to get PSG Atletico in, which city was that in yesterday?
I have no idea.
Wherever
Pick
it was.
city, wherever it was.
PSG versus Atletico in the US in June. I mean, that would just be happening in July. It's just happening for a lot more money. So, like, most of these teams don't have any friendlies. They can't arrange any friendlies because they don't know. But this is their pre-season, basically. They'll go on holiday after this. They'll come back. They'll probably play 1 or 2 games. And so it's to be seen how much impact this actually has. Maybe we're just displacing pre-season a little bit.
It was in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. But by the way, I think 2 important points. There are regions, by the way, where this isn't preseason. This is during their season. So this is a disruption to the clubs that aren't there, whose season is now disrupted or put on hold, or games are moved for this. And Auckland City is a great example. Yeah, they got 10-0. You know what Auckland has done the last 3 seasons? Won their league, won their league, won their league. 3 seasons running. Now you're going to give them this FIFA money that's an outsized amount of money to the point of distorting these other competitions. And what's Auckland City probably going to do from here? Win the league 7 more times in a row, leveraging this money to make themselves stronger. So this isn't a distortion globally, because these bigger clubs like a Palmeiras or an Auckland City, or an Al Ali, is it the Egyptian side that's there, right? The Moroccan side that's there. These sides are going to get money that is very outsized for their competitions, allowing them to further distance themselves. So that's a consideration for whether it's going to have an impact on the competitiveness of other leagues downstream. The money's not going to change the competitiveness of the Premier League, which already you could argue has a competitiveness problem, by the way, but it will in other leagues. So these are a lot of things that will take time to shake out. For my own considerations of the Premier League next season, I confess I am curious to see how like a city try to leverage this to smooth their transition to the next era. Clive, any final thoughts on this before we move to transfers, which is really the only thing anyone cares about?
Yeah, I'm so negative about this tournament, but wouldn't it be wonderful if, say, Man City did well in the competition and they took out their 50, 60 million quid and looked at their season tickets and said, you know what, we're gonna decrease them by 25%. Do you think, where do you think this money's gonna go? Is it just more of the same? Every time we go near a new subscription for our TV channels, it's more money. Season tickets, I don't see many of the teams, or a couple throws it, but most of them put them up because the cost base of football is going up. And that's the truth. So they have to manage that. It would be nice that these competitions that are giving you money out of literally nowhere, that could come back into the game some way and maybe go to all supporters. Have we ever seen that? Has anybody ever voiced that? I just think it'd be good. I think it'd be really good, And but we're not going to get that. What we're going to get another guy come in that fits regulations, and his age is going to get 20 million in his bin. And the people that benefit are the same people, just more of it, and so I don't mean to be negative, because I love my football. I watch anything, but personally, I think I have to stop, because if I keep doing it, I'm just feeding it, And so I feel uneducated in this topic today because I don't want to learn it. At the moment, I'm learning non-league teams, how they're rebuilding their squads. I'm learning how the women's game is developing for the Euros and what Arsenal are going to do with their signings. I want to learn more about the opposition of the women's team. So when I talk to Tim, I know what he's talking about. That's where my head is. I don't want to learn about these teams anymore. Enough, mate. Enough for me. That's where I am.
Yeah, and look, I have a slightly different view, only in this sense that I think there is absolutely a world where it is exciting for people who are the supporters of clubs from Brazil and Argentina and Egypt and Morocco and New Zealand and Australia to and the United States watch their clubs compete against one another. I think those kind of competitions can be fun. I just think that stops being fun when you drop billion-pound clubs like Real Madrid into the mix, and it looks like Boris Johnson playing rugby against kids, right? Remember that video? It's pretty funny. And suddenly this idea of all of these teams from around the globe competing against each other is distorted by these 1,000-pound gorillas in the room that beat up on everybody and then just wind up facing each other in a competition that's a lookalike competition, the one that just ended like 3 weeks ago. So that to me is where any vision of it being a sort of egalitarian global competition is a little bit destroyed. So everybody's entitled to their perspective, of course. No one is saying you can't enjoy this. I think there is a question of who it's for and what it becomes, and we're going to see that over time. And it'll be interesting, I think, to see if it has a positive impact on these other clubs from other regions or has a distorting effect that has negative downstream consequences for their domestic competitions. But we won't know that for a while. So I think we can pivot from what became actually a quite interesting and naughty political and global sports economy conversation, which is certainly not what I expected because I just wanted to talk to you about nonsense transfer rumors. But thankfully, we can pivot to those now. And before we talk about some brands, actually, you know what? Look, this is the perfect stopping point to talk about brands. Let's get that out of the way because it's like the perfect point. And then we can do transfers. We're right here. We've stopped one topic. We're going to start another one. So what I will do is simply tell you how to shave your privates. You know what? I'm not going to tell you how to shave your privates because I'm sure you understand the mechanics, the physics of shaving your privates. I'm just going to tell you what tool to use. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It is available in the white hot special edition colorway from Manscaped, available across the UK, Europe, and Australia. And you can just get the regular colorway in the US, right? The thing with the Lawnmower 5.0 is the new 5.0 has a foil blade, so it can go completely smooth, which it did not have in the past. So now you can go low or completely smooth. You have a design that helps reduce the risk of nicks, cuts, and irritation where it matters most. And I can vouch for the battery life, incredibly long battery life. I use it in the shower, so it's wet, dry. It is just the best purpose-built tool for something that most of us do anyway, which is shave your privates. And if you're doing that, use this. And if you want to get the white hot colorway, you can. In the UK, EU, Australia, white hot looks, smooth results. The white hot 5.0 Ultra brings the heat without cooking your skin. It's sleek, easy to use, and way less terrifying than whatever you were using before. Use code ArsenalVision for 15% off your entire order at manscaped.com. That's 15% off with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Stay cool, stay smooth, and leave the burns to the sun. And e-commerce. It's really astounding how easy the internet has made it to start your own business, to sell your own products, to do things that allow you to have some independence. But ultimately, e-commerce does get into complex topics like taxes and shipping and cart abandonment and all these e-commerce concepts, how you sell on different platforms like Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, when really all you want to do is take your product and put it on a website and have people buy it. So Shopify makes that simple. You put up the pictures, you put up the description, it takes care of the shipping stuff with a click, the taxation stuff with a click, how to get it on to your other platforms like Insta and Facebook and TikTok and things like that. So Shopify makes it simple to focus on opening your business in a way that looks professional and feels professional to the people that want to buy your stuff. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/arsenalvision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/arsenalvision, all lowercase, to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/arsenalvision, do it now. And last but not least, Indeed. Indeed is, to me, the most common sense thing when it comes to hiring, because if you're looking for a job, you don't want to have to go to a million websites. And if you're trying to get people to hire, you don't want to have to use a million websites. Less time spent, more effective outcomes, right? Indeed is about finding candidates that are better fit for your job, which is also a better fit for the candidates. The worst thing when you're applying for a job is feeling like they're never going to see my resume, even though I'm the perfect fit. And the worst thing when you're trying to hire candidates is thinking, I'm going to be inundated with applications to this job, and I'm never going to be able to filter out across all the websites to the best candidates. Well, with sponsored jobs, you can post jobs that jump to the top of the page for relevant candidates, so you reach people you want faster, and it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs, and you get the best candidates. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms to just why. Hiring. Indeed. All you need. Send over that.
Indeed.
Got it. Okay, we got there in the end. Hey, all right, Clive, we're going to have kind of a little bit of fun here because I'm just going to say this.
Uh-oh.
What's the Arsenal transfer rumor that has your brain going right now? What's the link or the rumor that's got you most invested, got its grips on you, it won't let go, and even though you know not to get pulled in by these things, it's the one that's on your mind right now?
I'll be honest with you, none of them. I think the
shows you how
one,
great we're doing then.
The striker one, everyone's clued in, aren't they? Just on the striker ones. If they bring out a name we're not aware of, then that'll be fun. But so we all know that. We know every bit of it, that one, every nuance. We're all over it. The left wing one is a bit more challenging for me. So if I'm investing in that one, I'm investing in it only because I don't know. I don't. I think it's important, maybe more important than what some people are saying. So that's the one, maybe, Elliot, if you to answer your question, it's just getting me a little bit. But I haven't really got names, and I sway every single day. Centre mid sorted, goalkeeper sorted. I was going to get a defender. There's a couple of going around lately, which I think are quite interesting. But I suppose if there is one, to go back to it, I think the left wing one is the one that's making me more tactically rather than the names. Because I think it's an important decision that we make. Not because at centre forward we have something, and we're going to get something, and I think that's enough. But in the wide areas, we need something more. And that's very important for our success, in my humble opinion. So the wide player option going forward is the one that's probably got me a little bit more.
Interesting. What about you, Tim? Is that the one?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because it's the one we know the least about, as Clive's kind of intimated there. Like, we know who the backup goalkeeper that we want is and that we're going to get. We know about Zubimendi and we know about Gyökeres and Sesko. So, like, the left, there's, I think there should be and probably will be a defender as well. And we've heard bits and pieces, and I know you guys discussed that on the kind of Friday night pod that you did, but definitely left wing, and not just because I think the links there are less clear, but I just wonder if there's whether they're related to the striker search. Like, do they have, let's just say Rodrigo, for example, do they have that in mind? And it's like, well, if we can get him, then we have to go for this striker because it's more cost effective. Or so, but I'm with Clive as well. I think it's an area where we definitely need an upgrade, and then it could have a knock-on effect to the future of either one of Martinelli or Trossard. What do we do with the Trossard contract? Like, I can't see us selling either of them really this summer, but maybe. So that's the one that has the most mystery around it. And I also think that of all of the signings we might make, that might be this guy goes straight into the starting 11 one, because the strikers, I think they'll compete for that shirt. And, the defenders, I think we're looking at backup. I think Zubimendi probably goes straight into the team. But, like, the left winger is another one where it's like, this guy might start the first game of the season if he's in by then. So definitely most intrigue around that.
Yeah, I got to be honest, I don't have a really good feeling for the rumors I think are true right now and the ones I think aren't. I mean, there's some that aren't, you just like know they aren't. But if you said to me right now, I had to tell you who we're going to sign, usually even at the beginning of the summer, I feel like, well, it's going to come from this cluster of players, this cluster. The striker is the one where I feel like I think I know. But Clive, I have to admit, I find the striker one kind of frustrating in the way it's being reported. This is where you have to be careful during the transfer window. You can't get frustrated with the club just because people are reporting things you like or you don't like, right? The club is doing what the club does, and we'll see. But it's sounding more like we are simultaneously working on Sesko and Gyökeres with Watkins as a possible sort of backup option that we believe is out there that we could get. And I kind of feel like, given how long we've known we need a striker and given how long we've monitored and been interested in those players, that this shouldn't be as close as it is. And maybe I'm being unfair, but I feel like we should have a clear perspective on which one we want and execute on that pretty efficiently, given the amount of time we've looked at these players and the amount of time we've needed this position. Am I being unfair?
That's a good position to have. I think, I suppose if you're of this opinion that, we should just pay 10, 15 million euros more than we should pay, then let's just go and get it done, right? But last time I looked, these guys in the mahogany roof don't chuck away 10, 15 million if they don't need to. They negotiate and they play things off each other. So I think, hey, we all have an idea. We'd all like these players in, so we could just relax and we can start picking first 11s and wonder what the tool's going to look like, and that'd be really nice. But it can change in a tweet, mate, to be honest. And as we head into the early part of July, I think it will change, because that's when it's suited. So I think your point is valid, and I suppose everyone tells us we haven't had a striker for such a long time. Why can't you just go and get one? But we don't know the conditions of the deal on either of them. We don't know what's being expected. We don't know the wages. We don't know what else we're going to need to do. There are other contracts out there that may need to be done. If Thomas Partey leaves, we may need to spend some money on a centre midfielder. That could change things slightly. If we get a deal for someone offers money for Trossard or Martinelli, what does that do to the overall thing? We just have to wait for it all to sort of land, because you don't want to be in a situation where you can't adapt, can't adjust. Trust me, Elliot, mate. The pitchforks will be out if we don't get anybody. And and I don't think there'll be anybody who will not be carrying a pitchfork. Right? So, given what's happened in the last year, and so we need to do this. And so, but another thing just to bring in, Umberto, we're learning about him, aren't we? We're learning about how he operates. We're being told how he operates, but we're still learning. We haven't seen any execution yet. So it's still open, right? And so the ways of working of the new backroom staff is slightly different, right? So I'm trying to stay cool, knowing that we have to do something. And I think we will, right? So I'm chilling at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, Tim, I would just say that striker is a position that we've been talking about, it feels like, for years, because we have. And so I think there's an impatience. There's always an impatience with transfers, but there's an impatience to know who it's going to be and to get it done. And usually with that impatience, I tend not to be very sympathetic, because I do think you should negotiate. I do think you should get the best deal available. I do think you should get the best available player. And it is just June 16th. But I will admit, the scars of the last two windows and the need for a striker and the speed with which some other deals are getting done, right? Wirtz is about to be announced, it sounds like, maybe as soon as tomorrow or the next day. It creates a little anxiety. And so I'm just wondering if you feel, given the need for this position and how long it's been out there, if this is something that needs to be resolved expeditiously, basically.
Yeah. So I picked up the reins on Arsblog this morning because Andrew's on holiday to tomorrow, and wrote about exactly this. I'm going to pick you up on something there. Mm-hmm. I hate to break it to you, like, other teams are not getting deals done either. Like, what's happening? Release clause deals have been done, so where there's no negotiation over fees. So Mateus Cunha, Liam Delap. I think there's some suggestion that, what's the name of the guy at Lyon again? Cherki. Mm-hmm. I think actual release clauses in France are not legal, but because Lyon are in a pickle financially, there was some kind of gentleman's agreement. Basically, the release clause deals are the ones that have been done so far. So, there's no negotiation over fee. Look around at what's been done. It's not very much, right? Wirtz is not done yet. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be done by the looks of it. But the reporting now is going to fly over on Friday. That link was reported on May the 14th that Ornstein broke that. So that's over a month. But when we hear about other clubs being linked with players, we just go, they've signed them. And we don't sit and watch the kind of, that's a month and 2 days, right? Since the first solid Wirtz link. We haven't sat there going, reading all those awful non-updates that say absolutely nothing. It's such a, there are some people, for example, who report transfers who perhaps aren't attached to specific publications who make their money directly off of social media, who are therefore incentivized to say 4 times a day, monitoring, preparing a bid, this should happen, blah, 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 blah. And the great thing about doing that is you're kind of selling the disease and the cure at the same time. Because the more you do that, the more people depend on that. They want 4 updates a day that say absolutely nothing. But we don't get involved in the minutiae of that when we hear about other clubs' transfers. We just go, oh, that's done. So like Mbuma, I'm using you as an example here, Elliot. I'm not picking on you, but you referenced Mbeumo as well last week on the podcast. United aren't getting that deal done.
Now Spurs are in for him.
Well, because of their PSR position, they were trying to negotiate a payment structure, and Brentford are a lot like Brighton. They don't do that. Brentford and Brighton, they name the price and they say, go away until you meet that price. Don't talk to us. So they haven't got that done. And, and even something like Wirtz, where it looks like there's no competition, it's looked clear he's going to Liverpool and all of that, it's still not done yet. Because, to Clive's point, this is a lot of money. And so, what the payment structure looks like, what the upfront payments, the bonus pay, all of that stuff matters. So I'm not having a go at Liverpool here. They're just doing what every club does, ours included, and they're negotiating the fine details, which is exactly what we're doing at the moment with 2 striker targets, where I think at the moment it looks like we don't really have any competition for them, because Chelsea have signed a striker in Delap, and now they're at the Club World Cup. Man City don't need a striker. Newcastle don't need a striker. Manchester United can't really afford one. So, at the moment, we don't have any real direct competition. Spurs aren't really in for a striker, and they're going to sign Matthias Tell. Liverpool, they probably want a striker, but they're spending, presumably the majority of their budget on Wirtz, which is absolutely fine. So, we're in a commanding position here at the moment, I think. I'm with you. If it's July 16th and we're negotiating both sides, we're monitoring, we're respectfully monitoring, we're preparing. If we're still doing that on July the 16th, I'll get a little bit antsy. But June the 16th, I think that's a really good position to be in, where we've got 2 transfers done. I'm with you on we should have big expectations of this window, though, because my understanding of us keeping the powder dry in January was so we could do what we needed and wanted to do this summer. So we have to do that. Because the last 2 windows we didn't really get done what we needed to get done. However, I think the mood music of this window is completely different. I don't think we've got what we had last summer, which is we got to sell to buy a little bit. We don't have a lot of PSR headroom. This time we do. And so I think it's right to have like big expectations of this window. It's also the 3rd consecutive window where we're going to have a different sporting director. So we had Edu, Edu with his out of office on. What's the summer window? Jason Ato, the interim, but now we've got someone new. So I think it pays to kind of sit back a bit. But I think I take the 1,000-foot view. Kepa looks done. Zubimendi looks done. If I'd heard nothing about a striker by June the 16th, I might be antsy. We know we're negotiating with 2 of them from, I think, at the moment, a position of power. So I think we're in a good position at the moment, personally. And I think like the doom scrolling, personally, value judgment, I think the doom scrolling's getting to people. And, I think I'd encourage people to lift their heads a little bit.
Yeah, I also think there's a little bit of I like Italian food and I like Japanese food. If you tell me we're going out to Italian food and we start driving to my favorite Italian restaurant and I'm starting to think about whether I'm going to have the carbonara or the gnocchi, and then you pull into the parking lot of the Japanese restaurant, it's not that I don't like sushi. It's that I had in my mind that I was getting Italian food. What the hell do I mean? What I mean is I had started to coalesce around the idea we're getting Sesko. And right around the time I got excited about Sesko, all the reporting became about Gyökeres. And it's like, I could already taste the gnocchi, and now you want me to have a salmon roll. It's like, that's a hard thing to shift. So Clive, ultimately all I care about is that we get the right guy, and we get that guy in enough time to have a full preseason with us. There's still plenty of time for that. But have you found the shift from Sesko to Gyökeres interesting, jarring, PR? Do you have a feeling about that? Because the mood music was Sesko a week ago. Today it's Gyökeres. Is this all just part and parcel of negotiating, using the media, using social media to put pressure on the selling clubs?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are dates in my head, right? So our first game is July 23rd, I think, and we may meet a week or so beforehand, pre-season. I'm sure when it starts, probably early July. And so those are the dates. They're in my head. It would be nice to have a good couple of players in for pre-season, because what I care about is the group being together, developing together, understanding how we play. Because last time I saw a good, clean summer like that, it might have been the Jesus summer. It feels like it when they arrived. And we did really well when we started. And I think the start's going to be really important. Sesko, Gyökeres, well, I think I sway, like everybody. I'm convinced it's going to be Sesko. Then I watch a Gyökeres comp and I go, oh, he's a good player. and then I read some data saying to me he didn't score against the top half players in the league. And then you think about the quality of the Portuguese league, and then you see a shot from the edge of the area just breaking the net, you think, oh, he's a good player. Then you see Sesko, another comp, his last 20 shots, and he's stumbling over his feet. I'm not sure about him. Then you see another comp of him playing basketball and doing his exercises. What an athlete he is. I mean, you just got to just wait and hope that the people that are real experts really understand it. My view, I've been clear on it. But even when I've been clear on my view, if my view is wrong, I don't really care. What I really care about is when we're all together and the group's there and are we of the right quality. Because if we're really honest, we haven't had the forward quality consistently for a while, and we sort of, I don't want to use the word make do, because we've scored 89 goals one year, whatever it was. We've made
91,
it 91. Sorry, yeah, 89 points, 91 goals. Thank you, Elliot. But we've made this work. We've coached our way to this point. I would love to have some real talents that don't rely on the meticulous coaching that we have, that can really do things and create their own shot, create their own moments. And I don't think we have enough of those talents. And that's where we are right now. That's what we need to have. I think we've seen enough of how we play. It's about how about players play for us, really do something special for us.
Yeah. The reality is that the early transfer window thing that opened too, I think just ramped up the interest, the anxiety, the intensity of the window earlier than it normally does. I've usually always kind of had a policy of until July 1st, I kind of take it easy. I mean, Tim just mentioned Andrew's on holiday right now. Clive, you're going on holiday next week. This is supposed to be the quietest time of the football calendar, really, this into early July. And the Club World Cup combined with the early window has kind of upset the apple cart there a bit. So we all just have to take a deep breath. I'll stay with you for a second though, Clive. In terms of anxiety, I don't know that I have huge anxiety about incomings. I do think that there's outgoings that need to be sorted as well. One, though, that I don't think will happen is Miles Lewis-Skelly to Real Madrid, which, some Madrid media are talking about. There's genuine interest there in getting him on a free next summer. I'm much more excited about them getting Ibrahima Konate on a free next summer, which is something that they seem to be lining up, and they are certainly welcome to do that. But I assume you find the Miles Lewis-Skelly stuff more humorous than serious.
Well, it's good for his negotiations, shall we say, as he's negotiating his contract. It's good for him. England international now, paid at the top end of the game, and he's doing well. Very ambitious boy, but he's also, I don't say this to dismiss anything, but he's a big Arsenal fan as well, right? Mm-hmm. He really is, and we forget that. It does make a difference. But I do dismiss it, although Madrid do have a hole there. We saw that Garcia get run past by Martinelli, and I'm thinking, mate, I'd replace you and all, and so they do need that player to come in, maybe potentially. But I dismiss it, although the Konate thing, that's in the post, by the way, and that could be a problem for Liverpool because he's not signing, is he? And,
no.
So, yeah, that could be a problem for them. And although, back to your
check his Duolingo account, Clive. check if he can speak Spanish.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I said to my boy the other day about Liverpool, look at their signings they're getting. Look at their fullbacks they're getting. They got Gyökeres, they got Frimpong, they got Wirtz. They're gonna sell one of the wide men. They're going to do something in the wide areas as well. I'm sure they might get Kike. You know, he said to me, very smart boy, he said, don't worry about that. He said, look at their fullbacks now. They're 2'2", the pair of them. They're smaller than the ones they're just selling. What would you do if you're attacking them? You go straight onto their fullbacks. And I thought, you know what? He's smart. You know, so every team
to be
has
fair,
their
he can
weakness.
say that because he's like 6'7" and his cheekbones that are as wide as his
but it's
shoulders.
a valid point. Look at Gyökeres and Frimpong, right? You gotta. These things got to be balanced. They've got to be correct, right? So every team has its weaknesses, what they're trying to achieve. So yeah, back to getting. I'm cool with where we are. I am more relaxed than ever. You know, I just think we just have to trust these new people. And I did hear a rumor the other day about Zinchenko and Kivior and/or Calafiori potentially going to Italy. Right, so now that's interesting. What would you do if Calafiori gets tapped on the shoulder? So some people say, you know what, he's had some injuries, maybe that's something we should do. Kivior, also a player that probably needs to play a little bit older. He needs to play. He's done really well, considering he doesn't play that often. Zinchenko's got some wages problems potentially, but AC Milan like him. These are encouraging noises, shall we say? You know, I like Calafiori, I like him to stay. But these are encouraging noises that our players are not seen as complete deadbeats, the ones that are not actually playing every single week. Because that's been, in the past, we've worried about this, haven't we? We've worried about our identity in the market from a sales perspective. So, yeah, but anywhere else who you think should be going from a sales perspective, apart from potentially Zinchenko and Kivior?
Well, there's Vieira. There's Sambi Lakanga, right? Those will go. Nuno is already gone. Karl Hein might go. I think then there's the interesting question of whether we would make a bigger sale in addition to a larger purchase, maybe in a wide area. You know, could Leo still go? Could Martinelli go? I think those are at least fair questions, if not things we're considering. I don't know for sure if we would be considering that. So those would be the ones, Clive. I mean, Gabriel Jesus would have been one that we talk about, but given the injury, obviously not going anywhere. Maybe a Reece Nelson if he is fit enough to move, but that's the list, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. But we have to wait and see, don't we? So while we're waiting and seeing, everyone expects all the signings to be in as well, by the way, which weakens our position when we go to sales. True. And so we just have to wait. I know it's frustrating, but we just have to wait. You know, Fulham, like Reece Nelson, want to get him back. The number I think is around 10 mil. That'd be good for him as well, by the way. Great move for him, you know. And he did well for him in the games that he played when he ripped his hamstring. But they still like him. The manager stayed stable. He hasn't gone to Spurs, so that could happen. If the manager had gone to Spurs, that wouldn't have happened. So that loan may have worked for us, and we get good number, pure profit for that player, right? So it's just about being patient, really. No one's taking those 10 mil jobs. No one's doing it. Tim's right. No one's doing it now. Why do it now? Contracts end on June 31st or June 30th, wherever it is, and we go from there.
I have to say, I would be very sad to see Calafiori go because I rate his talent so highly, and I think he's such an exciting player. The fitness issues are real. I mean, you can't have a season like you just had and not acknowledge that. But there is a world where you could convince me if we keep Kivior, sell Zinchenko, sell Calafiori for maybe a big fee, because he's very highly regarded in Italy, obviously, as he should be. And we're getting Jarell Hato, if we're doing that and keeping Kivior, maybe you're net positive on those sales in a way that helps you do more in the attacking area. So if you said to me, we have to move Kivior, but we have to move Calafiori, but we're going to get Jarell Hato and we're going to be able to invest more in the attack, I'd probably grudgingly accept that. I'd be sad to see Calafiori go because I think there's a world where he stays fit and becomes a really interesting, exciting part of a very good Arsenal. But you can't wait around. You just can't wait around. And if there's a move we can make that makes us better, we should make it now. And Tim, that leads to the last conversation I want to have here, which is just simply the Arsenal identity crisis that I referenced at the beginning of the show. When you and I did our top 5 lists, I spent a lot of time scanning through the post-Invincible era. And I think it was just kind of struck. Arsenal are one of the biggest clubs in the world. There's no question about that. On revenue, on interest, on social media following, on the number of tickets we sell. I mean, not just the men's team, by the way, the women's team as well. We are a massive club. In the United States, Arsenal is one of the biggest clubs. in this country and certainly globally. And yet, it's 21 years without a title. It's our entire history without a Champions League. And I just sort of wonder if there's a bit of an identity crisis that starts to develop and a need to do the things that align with your stature in the game at some point, that you can't just be the big club that doesn't win the big things and stay the big club forever. And I realize that this kind of status anxiety has nothing to do with the football, really. It's just you're as big as you want to be, right? You can say you're a big club just because you feel like saying it. But to what extent do you feel any of that status anxiety? And I think as I looked at it, the other thing that struck me is we are living through, over the last 2 or 3 seasons, without argument, one of the best eras of Arsenal Football Club in 21 years. It's simply that true. And to anybody that is frustrated by this era, I get it. But they also have to put it in the context of 21 years of an Arsenal that really has not been at the top of the football tables, that is getting over 80 points. I know we didn't just do that this season, but which we hadn't done hardly ever in 21 years. That is getting in the semifinal of Champions League, which we've done 3 times ever in our history. So I find myself doing a little bit of soul searching, I have to admit, and feeling like this club, it needs it. I think we really need it. We really need one of these big trophies. And I'm wondering if you connect to that at all, or you think that's just the byproduct of me having prepared for a podcast last minute.
Yeah, we do. For sporting reasons, we need that. And then the branding comes along afterwards, like the Invincibles. I'm fond of telling this story, but the 2003-04 season review is actually called the Untouchables. That was the initial name kind of the club came up with, but like the fans, there wasn't a vote or anything, but everyone just started saying the Invincibles, and that becomes the brand. Like, I kind of think the club almost isn't in control of that. That flows out from kind of sporting success, and there are some clubs that have stories as well. Like, Liverpool, obviously they have like their European Cups, as they're fond of reminding everyone. But even stuff like, I hope this doesn't sound too glib, but tragedy underscores some of that as well. So Hillsborough and for Manchester United, like Munich and everything like that. And there are different things that go into a club story. I think it's a completely valid thing to ask, what is Arsenal's story for the last kind of 20 years? What's the post-Wenger kind of story? What's the post-Thierry Henry kind of story? But I think that does just come out of on-pitch success, really. And I guess what I would say is, with Arsenal, for me it's more of a when, but if we do win like the league or the Champions League, that's going to be an amazing story. That's going to be incredible that our former captain picks us up, in a real funk, in what I really think was an identity crisis at the end of, like, I don't look at Arsenal as having an identity crisis because we have such a strong identity, probably through the manager at the moment, but we didn't have one in the end of that, end of the Wenger era and Emery and all of that. What a story it's going to be when, like, our ex-captain, who is doing his first ever managerial job, like, picks the club up, transforms it, and wins it one of those titles. I just think that's going to be incredible. And I look at, like, Liverpool. Liverpool went 30 years without winning the league. Now, they did win a Champions League in that time, but that was 2005. That was still 15 years after they'd won a league. And I think they retained that kind of aura. And of course, like, there's the additional question of, you could say, well, all of those FA Cups and things like that, but how much does that count in people's kind of psyche now, the kind of domestic cups and things like that? Does it have the same cachet? It certainly doesn't have the same cachet it used to. Does it have any? Like, it's funny, we're constantly told that, like, if we win the Carabao Cup, that's going to make everyone feel different. No, it's not. It's not going to make anyone feel different for a second. If Arsenal finish second again in the league next year, but win the Carabao Cup, I'm sorry, all those people who are pretending that would, like, put the shine on the project, it wouldn't at all. Those same people would be very, very critical. It's got to be one of the big ones. But I think well, I was going to say you can't divorce like the kind of the brand and the identity and the on pitch success. They come out of each other. Basically, at the end of the day, and you mentioned the women's team there. What was their story until a couple of weeks ago? Was they've got this really good squad that's been together a while, but in the league it's under-delivered, hasn't challenged Chelsea enough, which is all completely and utterly true. And then they just randomly win the Champions League, which they were not favourites for, and all of a sudden that story's, it may be too much to say it's gone, certainly not among Arsenal fans, but all of a sudden it's just blown out the water by like having won the Champions League. So it can all change in a second. And indeed, we reference the Invincibles all the time, but what happened like before 2002? We finished second 3 years in a row. We lost a couple of cup finals. Like, it was very, is the Arsenal Man United rivalry still there? We lost 6-1 at Old Trafford one year, and it's easy to forget that for a few years things were up in the air, and then bang, like something just happens and the whole story changes. So I think it's probably correct to ask, particularly in an era where clubs are looking at, attracting fan bases and stuff like that, like, what's our story? Because we can't keep saying Thierry Henry. It seems to have held this far, but like that's not going to last another 10 years. But that just comes out of on-pitch success, and the rest will handle itself.
Yeah, look, it gives me no pleasure to say this, but as I looked back over where we've been, there were 15 seasons between the last time we crossed 80 points and the time we did it 3 seasons ago or 2 seasons ago. 15 years just to get to 80 points, forget win anything. And as I was looking back through that time at the 8-2 and the 6-0 and the 5-1 and the 10-2 to Bayern and the loss to Monaco and all those things, the thing that washed over me is Arsenal need a trophy that is either the Premier League or the Champions League. Cover your ears, domestic Cups fans. I don't care. We need to win the Premier League or we need to win the Champions League. Ideally, we need to win both. And this club needs it. And every single thing that everybody at the club does at this point needs to be, does it get us the Premier League or does it get us Champions League? If it doesn't, then we don't do it. Now, that doesn't mean you throw your values out the window and about building for the future and bringing academy players through and, thinking long term, because we don't want to be back in the bad place of getting 56 points and things like that. We don't want that. But Clive, we need it. We really, really do. And we are closer now than we have been in 21 years, in my view. And so it has to happen. We have to find a way to get over the edge. And I realized 21 years ago, there wasn't a Manchester City that spent whatever they want, and now even a Chelsea that spends whatever they want. And it was a different landscape. I accept that. And maybe we missed a window to win a Champions League, which I think we did, candidly. But it has to happen. And I just think, as much as I have enjoyed this journey and this process and this project, and I will continue to enjoy it, I think I am now struck by how important one of those 2 trophies is for the state of the club at this juncture.
State of the club, that's dramatic, Elliot. I think
it is.
I think it has to happen. I really want it to happen. And in life, you can't guarantee anything, right? So I've sat on stages and done different shows, and I've said to people, I've seen trophies. I've seen the league. I was there. All the latest league ones you can think back. Well, I've seen them, seen the cups, seen the European in 94, saw that in Copenhagen. Great memories, really good memories. But some of the memories I had in the last 3 years, with Arsenal being re-established back at the top table in a different landscape, with state clubs around us, people with endless funds, to see where the Premier League is today, every game on a Saturday is almost like a World Cup quarterfinal, it feels like. They're major events. And see what's happened in the last 3 years. Although it hasn't led to a trophy, they've been some of the best times I've ever had as a supporter.
Yeah, they've been brilliant.
Easily, right? And we haven't won. And I remember saying to myself, you know what? It would be nice to win. And then I had an experience. I know Tim knows what I'm going to say. When I went to the Emirates to watch the Women's win the Champions League final, I realised then something that had been locked away in my psyche. The importance of winning. And I found it incredibly emotional. Way more than I thought. way more. And so I made me realize then the journey is important. The process is important. How we operate, how we are, and our values is very important. But winning is cool. It really is cool. And but I also, you heard me say it before, I also think you win something when you really deserve to, and we're just not quite there yet, but but we feel very close. We feel very close. So I know what your point is absolutely spot on, Elliot, but I think this is why this summer is important, because we are at a juncture in our evolution with the ages of some of our core pillar players. They are right there now with experience, 2 to 3 years experience as a group. The contracts are solid, a few more to go. One's already gone down. You look at this group and the indicators are there. They really are there. If we do, when you look back and say, well, it was obvious they were going to win. Look at the age of their team. Look at this player. Look at that player. But until you do it, it doesn't mean anything. And I'm also conscious of the Pochettino thing, where they had a decent team, got to a Champions League final, finished second in the league, ended up not doing anything. And then they broke apart. I mean, okay, they run differently, but they broke apart, and it's there, right? That accusation is there. So the journey is important. Winning is something that I think maybe people like me who have seen us win have maybe forgotten how impactful it could be. And now we are in a world, because when we won in Copenhagen, mate, I would never have met you, Elliot. I would never have met all the people that I've met online, etc. If you didn't go to the games, you didn't know anybody, right? That was it.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about a global audience, and we played a Champions League semi-final. There must be maybe 1 billion people watch that game, and that's where we are now, right? So this could just be something that none of us can remember, none of us has experience, and I don't look back and think, well, it was better yesterday. No. What happens if we win again now? It'll be better than anything we've ever done. I'm convinced of that. Absolutely convinced. And I can't wait for it, right? But no guarantees, I'm afraid. So keep trying.
Yeah. I have enjoyed, not this past season necessarily, but a couple of these seasons as much as I can remember enjoying anything. Now, some of that's just because the joys of the past are so sepia-toned at this point. But the song is, we won the league at Anfield. We won it at the Lane twice. Stamford Bridge, Old Trafford. No one can say the same. The song is not, we won the league at Anfield. We won it at the Lane. Came close second to City, but we had the Bournemouth game. That's not the song. Okay? It'd be worth it in some respects, but that's not how this works. And it's time for us to add a line to one of these songs or a new song. And again, I accept it's hard. We're not entitled to it. If we get 97 points this season and finish second, that's not a trophy, unfortunately. Liverpool know that, by the way. And yet, I think the reason it hurts more is that I could excuse it when we didn't win the league to City because it's City and they're this thing. But Liverpool then somehow managed to win the league in the season that City aren't there for it, right? And it just, all these little things. I guess where I'm going with this is just, it's time. It feels like it's time. And I think this summer is going to be a very pivotal moment because people want to see that the club thinks it's time too with the actions that we take in the market. Not to guarantee us trophies, because I get it, you're not guaranteed. If we have the same injury crisis next season, we won't win anything. But just to see that the intention to try to go do it is there. And I think this group deserves that.
Bravo.
Yeah, I think they deserve it. All right, let's leave it there. Got into some interesting and different issues today, and I'm sure the first section of the pod will lead to a lot of disagreement and conversation. And all I would say is we welcome it. Please, come back to us with your thoughts on segments like that. Just realize that we're speaking our mind on the fly, and so if there are thoughts that you have that are different to the ones we've articulated, send an email or send a comment that explains yours in a way that reflects a willingness to have a chat, because we're always open to that. We will have a transfer daily later today. Clive and I have some scouting videos teed up for this week before he heads out on holiday, and we'll have lots more to do. So it's going to be a fun summer. And I will say the transfer daily, if you haven't checked it out, it is a humorous send up of transfer reporting. We cover the topics of the moment, but until it gets serious and needs serious analysis, it's also a humorous way to do it without having to do the doom scrolling. So as Tim said, you can get your head out of the doom scrolling. I'll keep my head in the doom scrolling for you, and then you get the update in a humorous way. So kind of a fun thing we got going on there. And I hope you'll join us. If you want to, you can use code AVP and get half off the first month of Patreon. See what you think. Anyway, Clive, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Tim, thanks, man.
My pleasure as always.
My name's Elliot Smith. Block me everywhere. It's the only way to keep all my nonsense off your timeline. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 transfer window.